Bang, and welcome back. The show, wow, the speakers, the content, and what's happening is amazing. We're moving on to the next guest, who is a very, very special guest, just like all of them. Everybody's going to know this next guest. But just before we go to him and his talk, we're going to take a look at the inspired illustrations that have been occurring with the guests. So the last one for CZ and Jessica, you guys can take a look here. And if you guys wish to download some of these, you can see on the bottom right-hand side is a link that you'll be able to click on and download this illustration. So on to our next guest. Our next guest has worked on Wall Street for almost 10 years, starting as a risk analyst at Bear Stearns and later becoming a VP at JP Morgan Chase in the aftermath of 2008 financial crisis. His expertise is in economic trends, trading, and risk analysis. Ever since getting involved in the cryptocurrency ecosystem in early 2013, he has been very active in spreading the relevance and importance of this technology as it helps promote economic freedom. He has been featured in several documentaries like Magic Money and Bitcoin Beyond the Bubble. Now an independent content creator for his website and YouTube channel, and is the organizer of 3 conferences, Unconfiscatable, Understanding Bitcoin, and the Financial Summit for Traders and Hedge Funds. He holds a master's degree in financial engineering from Florida State University, along with a bachelor's degree in mathematics and geology. He speaks today about Bitcoin's value proposition. Let's all welcome the man, Tone Vays. Welcome, Tone.
Thank you so much. Really looking forward to this. Thank you, BlockDown, for the opportunity. I really wanted to come to Istanbul, but unfortunately, as you can see from my background, we are in complete lockdown. So I will go ahead. Thank you so much for that intro. It was absolutely perfect. I really don't have anything to add, and we will jump right into the presentation. Before I do, I want people to notice my t-shirt that says unconfiscatable, censorship-resistant store of value. And this is exactly what we are going to discuss during this presentation, and I will do my best to get it done in 30 minutes. So let's just go straight to screen share and go from there. Like it's been said, my name is Tone Vays. You can find more information about me at tonevays.com, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, on pretty much all social media. And these are the 3 conferences: unconfiscatable.com, thefinancialsummit.com, and understandingbtc.com. And the name of this presentation is Bitcoin Value Proposition. And what you see in the background is the entire price history of Bitcoin, because let's face it, price is really the one thing that really matters. Many people say that price doesn't matter, but that is not true. Price matters a lot. And price reflects, most importantly, the confidence that people around the world have in Bitcoin. So let's go to the very beginning and talk about how Bitcoin started. A lot of people talk about the white paper, but all you have to do is just read the little abstract where Satoshi, who published this in October of 2008, with the Genesis block being released on January 3rd, 2009, made it very clear the actual innovation in Bitcoin, and it goes like this. Digital signatures provide part of the solution, but the main benefits are lost if a trusted third party is still required to prevent double spending. We propose a solution to the double spending problem using a peer-to-peer network. The network timestamps transactions by hashing them into an ongoing chain of hash-based proof of work, forming a record that cannot be changed without redoing the proof of work. So guess what is not mentioned in the white paper at all, nor obviously in the abstract, is the word blockchain. It did not exist. Satoshi never used that word in the white paper, but he clearly talked about solving the double spending problem and utilizing proof of work to do it. That is the innovation. You can see many sources, references down below. And one of them in particular I want to point people to, which is number 6, being Adam Back and Hashcash, even though Mr. Stornetta is in 4 of the 8 references that help Satoshi come to his work. So that was before Bitcoin even began. And as Bitcoin began, all for its first year and a half, it was basically not a big deal. It had a maximum price of approximately 10 to 15 cents, and no one paid attention to it until late 2010. And that's where the buzz started. The first time people heard about Bitcoin on the mainstream media was due to WikiLeaks. When WikiLeaks in late 2010 got cut off from its funding sources of donations through Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal, one of the Bitcoin developers at the time, named Amir Taki, said, bring it on. Let's encourage WikiLeaks to use Bitcoin, and I'm willing to face any risk for the fallout of that act. Satoshi was still active at the time, and he did not agree. Satoshi replied and said, no, don't bring it on. The project needs to grow gradually so the software can strengthen the way. I make this appeal to WikiLeaks not to try to use Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a small beta community in its infancy. You would not stand to get more than pocket change, and the heat you would bring would likely destroy us at this stage. So Satoshi was very conscious about Bitcoin being used for activities that the government may not necessarily approve of, because the project was still too young, and being decentralized, it was facing risks of potentially being some bugs being exposed and it not functioning properly. WikiLeaks actually listened to Satoshi and did not implement it at the time. This took place in early December of 2010. But in early February 2010, there wasn't much of a choice. Right here, oops, didn't mean to do that. Silk Road launched in February of 2011, and that's when Bitcoin really showed its first use case of being censorship-resistant value transfer, being able to buy anything on the web and no one can stop or censor that payment. WikiLeaks did not make much of a news headline at first, but right around that very first bubble going into $2, thanks to a senator from the great state of New York, Mr. Chuck Schumer, Bitcoin got some national attention when he went on TV and in a matter of just a few minutes was able to show people how to use Tor, how to access Silk Road, and how to buy whatever drugs they wanted. An amazing Bitcoin I am certainly not able to achieve in a couple of minutes, as you can see by this presentation, which will take a good half an hour. But he managed to do this on national television. You can see Silk Road right there on his computer, and Bitcoin certainly got lots of national attention, helping to drive that bubble to $30. Around that same time, WikiLeaks began accepting Bitcoin as a means of donation, and it certainly helped them out as well. That also led to our very first and the biggest bubble that Bitcoin had, as it crashed from $30 down to $2. This did not take a very long time, and while it was painful price-wise, it was not very painful time-wise, which I will get to in relation to the next two bubbles that took place. It took Bitcoin some time to recover. The entire 2012 was a slow grind back up. And in early 2013, around the time of the first Bitcoin halving, which we are about to have again in less than a month, Bitcoin started to rise in 2013. Now, on a personal note, while I heard about Bitcoin during the initial WikiLeaks conversations by watching channels like RT and Max Kaiser, the Silk Road case did not really come across my radar because not that I demonize anyone that wants to use any kinds of substances. Everyone has their own free will. That is just not something that runs across my attention. And while the WikiLeaks case seemed interesting to me, it wasn't enough to get me fully on board with Bitcoin. But 2013 changed many things. The biggest one of which being the events of Cyprus in March and April of 2013. So at that time, the European Union and the Cyprus government decided to shut down the Cyprus banks and simply confiscate 50% of everyone's money, after initially talking about a 7 to 10% penalty on money in people's Cyprus bank accounts back in March. By July, it was decided that they would confiscate 47.5% of everyone's money above 100,000 euros at the Cyprus banks. And this incident bothered me a great deal. And this is when I realized the most important property of Bitcoin was not its censorship-resistant value transfer. The most critical and sacred property of Bitcoin is the fact that Bitcoin is the first asset in human history of value that is unconfiscatable. And we've never had that before. And the majority of people have not realized that. And when they do, I think that would take Bitcoin to the next level. This is why I own unconfiscatable.com, and the conference is called Unconfiscatable, because I think this property is absolutely vital. One day, I expect to see the word in the dictionary with a picture of Bitcoin right next. So basically, if you had 200 euros in the bank, the government simply confiscated 47,500 euros from that bank account. Now, when I say Bitcoin is, actually, I have one more slide. More importance as to why being unconfiscatable is so critical. I gotta find this statistic since 2014. I know it's been 6 years, though this presentation I originally put together back in 2015-16, but it has evolved over time. In 2014, in the United States, law enforcement confiscated more money from people than burglars have. So criminals are no longer the number one group of people that are more likely to steal money. Law enforcement is. And this is another reason to be able to protect your value by having it be unconfiscatable. Now, of course, it is only unconfiscatable if you are properly protecting your Bitcoin, which is honestly easier said than done. When Silk Road eventually got shut down on October 1st, 2013, the government was able to confiscate 144,000 Bitcoin because, unfortunately, it wasn't properly protected. Thank God the government is not a very good trader, and they sold all that Bitcoin at the bottom of the market in 2014 and 15, only profiting with $48 million instead of the $2.4 billion they could have gotten if they sold it on the day of this article, December 14th. And if this article waited 3 days to be published, that would have been about $4 billion that they could have gotten, assuming they could time the top of the market, which is very, very difficult. So speaking of that's the top of the market that took place in 2017. Let's go with our timeline and talk about the top of the market in 2013. This was the second great bubble in Bitcoin history. I mean, maybe you can consider the Cyprus bubble the second one, so this makes this the third. And at that peak, we saw the collapse of Mt. Gox, the biggest exchange at the time, for another example of how critical it is to protect your Bitcoin, and it could be hacked away. Now, we don't have time to get into the history and the story of Mt. Gox. I just want to point out that a lot of people don't know the fact that Mark Karpeles, the man currently, I believe, still in prison in Japan for the collapse of Mt. Gox, did not create Mt. Gox. He purchased Mt. Gox from a man named Jeb McCaleb, who may or may not be also speaking at this conference. I am personally pretty critical of Jeb McCaleb, and most of that criticism goes due to this email exchange with Mark Karpeles, when Mark Karpeles challenged Jeb McCaleb about the 80,000 missing Bitcoin that were not in Mt. Gox when he bought the exchange. And there was lots of excuses from Jeb McCaleb telling Mark Karpeles that he should like run a bot in order to get that back. I don't know if it was or wasn't the Willy bot that everyone came to know a few years later. Also with statements like maybe you could just mine it. Then this article also points out how a few months after Mark Karpeles took over Mt. Gox, it was apparently hacked for up to 200 something thousand Bitcoin. And the hack was speculated to be from Jeb McCaleb's old computer that still had admin credentials to the Mt. Gox database that caused things to go down. Then Jeb McCaleb went on to create Ripple, and we know about that project very well, or at least most people watching this should. Not going to get into Ripple as well. So what happens with every bubble? Well, when things go up exponentially, really, really quickly, they fall just as hard and just as fast. Bitcoin has seen many of these bubbles, and I believe it will see at least one more, and hopefully after that, it will stabilize. So unlike the 2011 bubble or the 2013 mini bubble back in March, this one was a lot more painful. While the price dropped its usual 80 to 85%, this one took a good year and change to get to its low, and then it got stuck in its low in 2015 into 2016. And to me, history doesn't exactly repeat, but it certainly rhymes. One of the most important events for Bitcoin actually took place in the summer of 2015. And to me, that was the collapse of the Greek financial system and their banks. When the Greek banks simply shut down that summer, I believe it was June of 2015, the Greek banks went down and you did not have access to your money. And both of Bitcoin's properties, unconfiscatability and censorship resistance, were on full display in Greece. At first, the government made a law that you could only withdraw 60 euros a day from the ATM machines. And then a week or two later, they decided to change that and to cap you at 420 euros. And that's all you had for the entire week. So once that law changed, everyone ran to the ATM machines on Monday. And this is what Greece looked like when they were allowed to withdraw their weekly allowance from an ATM machine. And that picture isn't much different than the picture in the upper right-hand corner of New York City, the panic of 1907, even during the gold standard, because people lost faith in the banks. That was a very bad panic in 1907 that directly led to the creation of the Federal Reserve. Again, can't get into the history, but that's pretty much, that was the main catalyst. The middle pictures are of Weimar Germany back in the 1920s during their hyperinflation. Oh, let me see if we can see that picture. During their in 1920s during their hyperinflation. And how do I get rid of that bar at the bottom? Anyway, it doesn't matter. And you can see how burning money for heat gave money better utility than using it as money. You can also see in 1934, another bank panic in the United States. People are burning money right there. And you can also see a more recent picture. This is 2007 Zimbabwe, when they had their hyperinflation. All right, so since we mentioned, and by the way, the only difference between those pictures is the fact that some of them are in color and some of them are, of course, black and white. Now, since I mentioned 1934 already, let's talk about what happened that led to that panic in 1934. And that was as a direct result of FDR removing the gold standard from US dollars under a very strict penalty of 10 years in prison or a $10,000 fine or potentially both. He was able to confiscate gold from the banks. Now, a lot of people were afraid that he would actually do this. And during the election, he stated that he would not do this, but people didn't believe him. A lot of people started to withdraw their gold from the banks. Most people did not, of course. And he was able to confiscate lots of gold from the banks themselves. And this brings us to the third property of Bitcoin that is very critical, that is also on my t-shirt as how this presentation began. And that is Bitcoin's hard money property, which was beautifully explained by Saifedean Ammous in the book, The Bitcoin Standard. I'm pretty sure his next book will have something to do with his diet standards, which you can see in the picture on the right. But let's just jump to a few highlights in the book. I'm actually going to jump right next to the next slide because I am low on time. Hard money, by taking the question of supply out of the hands of governments and their economists, would force everyone to be productive to society instead of seeking to get rich through the fool's errand of monetary manipulation. International economic summits are convened where world leaders try to negotiate each other's acceptable currency devaluation, making the value of the currency an issue of geopolitical importance. For every other money, as its value rises, those who can produce it will start producing more of it, whether it's rice stones, seashells, silver, gold, copper, or government money. Everyone will have an incentive to try to produce more. Bitcoin is the hardest money ever invented. Growth in its value cannot possibly increase its supply. It can only make the network more secure and immune to it. And it makes Bitcoin fundamentally different from every other money. And this goes into the idea that the world needs hard money due to governments overprinting and constantly creating inflation. We are watching this right now unfold before our eyes as $1,200 government checks are being sent to everyone. People are about to be given a bunch of loans that they may or may not have to pay back. We are seeing constant inflation all throughout the world, and that goes into the need for hard money. And Bitcoin makes this even better because it's actually politically neutral and decentralized. And I believe the Cyprus events helped finally bottom out the price of Bitcoin as we started to rise into the 2017 bubble. Of course, the creation of all the altcoins, I like to refer to them as shitcoins. People call me a Bitcoin maximalist. I like to call myself a shitcoin minimalist, but those are just names of what people refer to other people. We hit the bubble at 20,000. We fell down to 3, went back up to 14,000 in 2019, went back down to about 4,000 a few months ago, and here we are today. So let's just review real quick the Bitcoin's sacred properties: unconfiscatability, censorship resistance, it being uncensorable, and it being uninflatable, being hard money. That's how Bitcoin competes today with the dollar, with the euro, and with gold itself. So where is Bitcoin still slightly lacking, but greatly improving? From the day I made this presentation 3 years ago, we have gone a long way with Bitcoin scalability, and we haven't gotten that far with privacy or fungibility, but that is coming. One more soft fork and we'll have Schnorr signatures, and it gets a lot better. Now, let me mention real quick that this statement from Satoshi: the nature of Bitcoin is such that once version 0.1 was released, the core design was set in stone for the rest of its lifetime. Saifedean also points out this immutability is not a feature of the Bitcoin software, which is trivial to change for anyone with coding skills, but rather is grounded in the economics of the currency and the network, and stems from the difficulty of getting every member of the network to adopt the same change to the software. And this clearly states that Satoshi knew that these properties of Bitcoin will be sacred. And this is why going to a bigger block or creating an altcoin, anyone can do it. Anyone can create an altcoin. You don't even need to go to high school to create an altcoin. All you got to do is copy Bitcoin code, change a line or two, and there you go. You have an altcoin, and now it's all about trying to promote. Can you promote that altcoin to have some kind of a Ponzi-like value, because it actually doesn't have that much utility and probably never will, and lots of people have been able to do it properly in order to generate speculation in their altcoins, which I believe will eventually go away. Here is an article I published back in 2014 or 15 talking about all the use cases of Bitcoin. Don't really have time to get into that, but you can look at that. You can pause the video at a future time and check that out. You can also Google and find that article. So where is Bitcoin? Not perfect yet, but improving. And one of them is scalability, and the other one is fungibility. So I really need to update this picture. Sorry about that. This goes back to mid-2018. We are at over 60% segment adoption, which has made Bitcoin a lot more scalable. The days of $20 or $100 fee transactions hopefully are gone forever. But if people don't get on the Lightning Network, or if wallets like blockchain.info refuse to give their users the latest in technology 3 years after they said they were technologically ready, people will continue to occasionally pay high fees, and their transactions will take a little while longer. Schnorr signatures is not only a scaling increase, it is also a privacy increase, and more privacy is coming very, very slowly. Now, where is Bitcoin still having lots of issues, and people can still claim that Bitcoin can't do much because of these two issues, and at the moment they are kind of right. The price volatility of Bitcoin is problematic. Bitcoin is probably the most volatile asset that is talked about in the public. But this volatility will greatly go down as more and more value enters the chain. For example, even today, the price volatility of your cup of coffee, which you should be buying with the Lightning Network, it does not fluctuate with the big price swings of Bitcoin. If you're buying a car, however, Bitcoin is probably still a little too volatile for that. Maybe one Bitcoin is over $1 million. Buying a car with Bitcoin, unless it's a Lambo, will not make that much of a price difference week over week. This volatility is coming down, and I would love to see it go lower than the volatility of the euro. But here's what Bitcoin will not have. And this is a giant list of all the hyperinflations that have taken place around the world just in the last century. So throughout the 1990s, throughout the 20th century, these are all hyperinflations. And this book was written in 2008, so it only covered up to the Zimbabwe in 2007. I had to go out on my own and find all the hyperinflations in the 21st century, and we're already up to 15. God knows how many we'll have, in the next 10 years in addition. Now, the one everyone hears about is, of course, Venezuela, which is our biggest use case right now. It's not the first, not going to be the last. Here is Zimbabwe Part 2 that happened again. Zimbabwe had it in 2007, also had a hyperinflation stage in 2017. Hyperinflation is more of a political event than a currency event. That's why I still believe the United States will face deflation, even though it's money printing like crazy. Not going to get into the reasons for that. Even the first world currencies, the developed world currencies have crazy volatility as well. Here are two examples. This is the British pound that moved 10% in a single day, the day of the Brexit vote. And when the Swiss peg broke after about 3 years, the Swiss franc moved against the euro 30% in a single day, which is completely insane. Okay, so the other big issue with Bitcoin is that hacks still happen. The security of your Bitcoin is still very, very challenging and not user-friendly. And I don't know if anyone's going to come up with a very good solution for this one day, but I would love to see it. Hardware wallets certainly improve it. But I'm hoping that smart people smarter than me can do better. All right, I got less than 5 minutes, so I'm gonna have to go through this very, very quickly. So what do I see as taking Bitcoin to the next level for mass adoption? Obviously, the current events of the global shutdown, I think will, in the long term, help people, especially if there is another run on the banks, the way it happened in Greece, and people start to lose confidence in those banks. I also believe that the European common currency will not last. Sooner or later, one of the members of the Eurozone will either leave or get kicked out, and they will come off the euro. When that happens, people in that country or the surrounding country will try to protect their wealth by running into something like Bitcoin. And this could cause a huge chain reaction across all of Europe to get more serious about Bitcoin. For example, is the fight of all the countries around the world to eliminate cash. We are hearing this more and more now because cash apparently carries coronavirus, and they're going to use that excuse to eliminate cash. Lots of reasons for them to do it. The biggest reason to eliminate cash is, of course, you eliminate a bank run. All those pictures from prior slides will go to the history books. If there's no cash, there's no ATM machines, there's no way to exit the banking system, there's no more bank runs because you can't just put that money on a thumb drive. And therefore, bank runs are gone. Also, they can set any monetary policy that they like. If they don't want you saving money, they can put in a 10% negative interest rate, and now you are kind of screwed. You can't exit the system other than probably through Bitcoin or through gold. So hopefully people choose Bitcoin because I think it's much better. And every government thinks every one of their citizens is a tax cheat, and the economy helps them do it. Probably more true in India than anywhere else. Harvard estimates that 30 to 45% of India's GDP is lost due to the cash economy. This is perhaps why a few years ago, India decided to cancel out their high denominated bills, which are only about 2.50 cents and $5. And people were just running around from bank to bank in India. India, however, is not technologically ready to adopt digital currencies, even though most of our tech support is in India, which makes it a little bit ironic. But Germany, Belgium, and France are technologically ready to eliminate cash, and they would actually greatly benefit according to this study. Not going to get into it. France has passed lots of laws even years ago that you have to KYC even for 3,000 euro cash transactions. An example out of the US, where one of the states passed a law saying you can't sell secondhand goods. Actually, if you want to sell your old bicycle, you are not able to take cash for it. Got to find another way to do it. Germany is trying to eliminate collector markets. So if you have anything of value hanging on your wall or in a drawer, like a rare coin, and it's worth more than 100 euros, you are supposed to report that to the German authorities so they can probably tax you on that value. So all of these things will drive people into Bitcoin. Why do I think it's going to be Bitcoin? I have about maybe 2 minutes. I love this tweet from my friend Giacomo Zucco. Bitcoin maximalism, also known as common sense, that Bitcoin might succeed, is in the middle of the spectrum because it's in between two extremes. One extreme is the no-coiner, which is your Nouriel Roubini, who thinks not even Bitcoin can exist, and your multi-coiner, who thinks that Bitcoin is so infinitely replicable that their clone is best. This is your Vitalik Buterin, this is your Charlie Lee, this is your anyone that started an altcoin or is promoting an altcoin. Yes, Ethereum is going to get replaced too with the Bitcoin sidechain because this is pretty much my final slide. I've talked about how smart contracts don't actually have to be decentralized, but if they must, they have to be built on a scalable layer, which Ethereum is not. And Bitcoin's sidechain Liquid will do it. Where does the word blockchain come from? That comes from a comment in the code by Satoshi that said when they solved the proof of work, they broadcast the block to everyone and he named it a blockchain. The important part here is proof of work, not the fact that it's a blockchain. And that is the real innovation. Final slide. People have been working on this for a long time. Don't have time to read the words, but this email from 2001, when someone tried to create Bitcoin and realized that the solution is proof of work. Who was it? That was the 15-year-old Peter Todd. So when you think someone came along and created a better Bitcoin yesterday, realize that we have people in Bitcoin that have been trying to do this since they were 15 and came very, very close at the age of 15 to creating Bitcoin until Satoshi finally did. All right, not going to go through the rest. That entire last section has its own presentation that you can finally find by Googling me on YouTube. And please check out the YouTube channel, my Twitter, everything is under Tone Vays. And of course, the conferences that I organize around the world, Unconfiscatable in Las Vegas, the Financial Summit in Bali, Indonesia, and Understanding Bitcoin in Malta. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. I don't know if I left a question. I'm getting the message saying
we're
that the
still
writer-
here with you, Tone Vays, the most professional presenter ever. You're right on time. Absolutely smashed it out of the park. Always slightly controversial in there with your words, and that's what makes it beautiful and amazing and fantastic. Really great. We have a bunch of questions that came in from the audience. So if it's cool, if you stick around for a little bit, I have one question to end it off, and it has to do with where the heck you're at. Maybe that's a green screen. I'm not too sure, but I still want to know how you're dealing with this. But first, we'll go to this. What do you think about the record U.S. unemployment rate and their stimulus packages? And what do you think that will do for, and I know you don't like the shitcoin, so we won't bring in the crypto aspect, but what do you think this is going to do for Bitcoin in the near term and midterm?
I think, well, in the near term, we already saw that this wasn't good. In the near term, we saw the big crash in Bitcoin, and that makes total sense. We saw this with gold around the 2008 financial crisis. Gold and the stock market both crashed together. Now, gold this time did not crash as much, but when the S&P crashed, Bitcoin certainly crashed because at the moment, when people are losing their jobs, they're not exactly interested in speculating on Bitcoin. But as this continues along, and people will realize that Bitcoin is a safe haven asset. Now, all this free money that the government is giving out, it may be good at first, but just like many drugs, it gives you this high. And then afterwards, you realize that you need more. And continuous money printing and $1,200 checks in the mail will not keep coming. So I think in the long run, this is really bad. I don't like the way most countries are currently handling the situation. I know this virus is bad, and I understand the risks. I mean, I know people that are in serious health issues that may not even make it due to the virus, but the healthy people are okay. I think the economy needs to get back online immediately, maybe with some warnings, maybe continuing social distancing. But if you are young, if you are healthy, and you want to keep your business running, and I don't know how many people want to go back to work, but this is really, really bad. And I think more is to come. But just like with gold, gold stopped its crash 5 months before the S&P did back in 2008, and people started to see gold as a safe haven asset after the initial panic. I see the same thing with Bitcoin. I don't see Bitcoin crashing back to new lows. I think even if the economy continues to tank a little bit and the stock market continues to fall, I think Bitcoin has found its new bottom, and it will slowly go up, and the halving is coming. That's going to help quite a bit as well.
Fantastic answer. Yeah. Do you think that the dump in Bitcoin and gold has to do with deflation and not inflation? We talk about like the velocity of money. When the whole economy shuts down, they're collecting their funds, and the price of the US dollar is becoming strong at this point. Before, even though they're pumping money in, the velocity of the money has kind of stopped. And that creates, the calm before the storm, where the U.S. dollar is doing good, but then they've put in some money, and you have some major inflation afterwards. Would that make sense?
It does, though. I don't like the term velocity of money. Venezuelan currency has the fastest velocity of money ever, because the moment you get it, you have to immediately spend it, because even if you wait a day, it's going to lose a lot of value. So velocity of money doesn't mean as much as economic prosperity. The lower the unemployment, the wealthier people get, the more they will obviously spend. And in this environment, cash really is king. You will be liquidating stuff. You want cash. You don't know what's going to happen. So if you have to feed your family and your family knows you have Bitcoin, it's going to be very difficult for you to hold on to that Bitcoin, because you have to put food on the table. Yes. However, we will recover from this. And new businesses will pop up. May take the longer we stay shut down, the longer it will take us to recover. I believe Bitcoin would be fine. I've been a bear for 2 years. I became a bull on March 14th, the day after the big crash. And I think Bitcoin is a good hodl position if you're willing to hold it for the next few years. The economy will weather the storm. But yes, people just sell everything, because if you lose your job, you want that money. You want to make sure that you can put food on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, I realize that that background is not fully real, though I'm sure there are people in the world that are living in that environment right now. But quickly, just to top things off, just wondering how you are spending your days right now over the last few weeks, and maybe how you're planning on spending them the next couple of weeks in the situation we find ourselves in.
Sure. So to be honest, like you can see the number of days that I've already been in quarantine. So I was actually in South Africa. So I travel a lot over the last few years. 10 months a year I spend traveling, and my traveling isn't like, hey, let's go here for a month and like settle down. Just like 3 to 5 days per city or per country. So it's pretty hectic. And when quarantine first started, I actually got out of South Africa. I was there for almost a month, about 3 weeks. I got out of there just before the complete global shutdown of all international travel, and I'm back in the U.S. And at first, I really like enjoyed the quarantine because it allowed me to like just stay home and be in a stable environment for a change. I started trading again. So now that I've been outside maybe a few hours in the last almost 4 weeks now, and using the time to basically get back into trading. People have been very critical of me over the last few years that I teach how to trade, but I don't actually do it because I didn't have the time to do it and I couldn't focus on it. So now I'm back to trading traditional markets every day. Market's going to open in about an hour, so it's going to go back to trading. I've been enjoying getting back to that. So for me, it's been good, but a month staying indoors, like now I'm starting to get a little antsy. And I think people in the US have maybe at most one more month of this kind of isolation. After that, all bets are off. People are going to go outside. I think starting in mid-May and certainly going into the Memorial Day holiday at the end of May, people are going to party for their Memorial Day barbecues, and there's going to be nothing the government will be able to do about it. And if the more they try to do about it, it's going to be really, really bad. So hopefully everything will get back to normal. I've been enjoying it so far, but I'm ready to see some friends and family.
Yeah, listen, man, I hear you loud and clear, and I think everybody is in the same boat in this situation. Listen, man, we appreciate you coming on, and thank you very, very much for spending some time with us. Hopefully, you can continue to be in the 3D environment and join us for the virtual after parties and everything else. Again, thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you guys. Happy to do this, and yeah, just tag me when you tweet out the video. It'll be awesome.
Rock and roll. See you later.